Thank you very much, Sandeep. I'll now request Mr. G.V. Srinivas Murthy. He's a practicing company secretary and also a fellow member of the Institute of Company Secretaries of India. He will be sharing a perspective from the law side.
Am I audible? Yeah, very good evening. It's great to see even at this last session, still probably 50-60% of the participants for today's event. It's been a great experience for me since I was there from morning to listen to all the youngsters who were very keen to do something to contribute to the society. Now, I would like to talk about I'm a practicing company secretary by profession. Started my career with State Bank of India, then worked with SBI Capital Markets for a few years. I have seen closely how people, particularly SME segment, struggling to carry on their business because any business venture would require definitely money, and without that, it is extremely difficult. And large corporates do, I don't mind saying that, do exploit SME segment. And I thought that I need to do something myself. After working for about 15 years in the bank and then about for 5 years in the SBI Capital Markets, I quit the job. I was married. I had a 2-year-old son and a good job as an officer and a company secretary of SBI Capital Markets. When I put in my papers, people were telling me, "What are you doing? You are having a great job and a secure job." I said, yes, for me it was a secure job, but when I see around me people struggling to raise funds to sustain themselves, I thought, I think I need to do something to contribute to them in terms of advisory services, etc. That's how I came out of employment in 1994, and I've been in practice since 1994. My focus has been two areas. One is corporate consulting. Being a company secretary, I'm advisor to companies like Mercedes-Benz, Benz Research and Development Services, Collins, etc., where I do give consulting in corporate law. But my passionate area is the finance, where I advise the SME segment, help them in raising funds. So this is a little bit of background. And today's talk is on the CSR initiative by the Government of India and how it can help the social enterprises. And that is what I would like to just touch upon in the next probably 5 minutes. Yeah. Let me just give the genesis of CSR. We all know that the social responsibility has been there for ages. It's not that something which is new, which is being talked about. Way back in 1875, it is Mackay Company of New York City which contributed funds to orphan asylum. And we have also seen errors in terms of social service. It is brought out by University of Michigan Business Review in 78. Patrick Murphy classified the CSR errors into 4 distinct categories. Period up to 1950, where the companies donated to charities. It was more of charity-oriented activity. Period 51 to 67, the awareness era was created, where companies recognized the responsibility in community affairs. And period 68 to 73, it became an issue era because there has been development, industrial development, a lot of activities which contributed to the problems, ills, and companies focused on areas like urban decay, pollution problems, etc., etc. And period after 73, now the period what we are seeing and witnessing is treated as or called as responsive era, where companies have started taking a very serious view of what they need to do in terms of having an approach, holistic approach at the board level itself. So there is a lot of changes which are taking place in the board. They're bringing in people who are able to understand what the responsibility of the corporation should be in terms of contributing to society and examining corporate ethics, and lastly using social performance disclosures. Now, I was surprised myself when I saw that there is an international standard for SR activities, social responsibility activities. International Organization for Standardization has brought out ISO standard, which is ISO 26000, or in short ISO SR, in the year 2010. And what is the goal of this standardization? Goal is to contribute to global sustainable development and to encourage business and other organizations to practice social responsibility and to improve impact on their workers, on the natural environments, and the communities. So it's a voluntary guidelines. It's not mandatory. And what does it do? It encourages companies to report to their stakeholders, get the feedback on the action taken by the corporates, and then improve their social responsibility. Now, 7 key principles of ISO 26000 is accountability, transparency, ethical behavior, respect for shareholders' interest, respect for rule of law, respect for international norms of behavior, respect for human rights. These are the key 7 principles. And what is the objective? 7 objectives are organizational governance, human rights, labor practices, environment, fair operating practices, consumer issues, community involvement, and development. So we have a ISO standard for this. Now, there are a number of public sector undertakings which are practicing the 3 pillars of sustainability, which is people, planet, and profit. In the morning session, we have heard a number of speakers. Particularly, I was impressed with Mrs. Rao's video clippings, how true it is. We are destroying our nature. Unfortunately, corporates do not give a damn about the nature and the environment in which we are living. Thankfully, public sector undertakings are giving a lot of stress on this triple bottom line approach, which is people, planet, and profit. And it is deep-rooted in Netherlands. I think Mr. Kejriwal was mentioning about Netherlands having their role in, I think, some of these initiative in Bangalore, right? You said this in HSR layout, when you saw the cleaning up, etc., there was some mention about the Netherlands. Okay. Swedish company, okay. Okay. Spread across, yeah. Yeah, I mean, world over, there is a lot of concern for environment, but unfortunately, which is lacking in India. So that's one of the important aspect which public sector undertakings, from my experience, I have seen. Then what is the Indian scenario? Now, I have classified into 2 categories of the approach to this whole CSR. One is before the enactment of Companies Act 2013, which was just introduced in September 2013 in 2 phases. The first phase was in September 2013, and the second phase was from 1st April 2014. And the CSR has found its place in the legislation from 1st April 2014. Now, before this 2013 Act came into picture, we had initiative by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs asking the corporates to adopt some of these best practices in terms of their contribution to the society. So they came up with voluntary guidelines in 2009, and the guidelines required formulation of policy by the board of directors of the company, and it covered 6 areas. One is care for all stakeholders, because the concept of shareholder value has given way to stakeholder welfare. Now, stakeholders, as we are all aware, are shareholders, employees, customers, suppliers, project affected people, society at large. So, the objective was to create value for all. Now, the second aspect was ethical functioning, and ethical functioning was supposed to be reflected in governance systems, and the underpinnings was supposed to be ethics, transparency, and accountability. The third aspect was respect for the workers' rights and welfare. So it was to provide a workplace which is safe, then hygienic and humane. The fourth one was respect for environment. Now, to check and prevent pollution, then see that recycling was possible, reduce waste, efficient use of energy, environmental friendly technology. The fifth was respect for human rights. So the government thought that there was so much of human right violation both within the organization and outside the organization. So they wanted it to be brought into the fore, and they expected the corporates to not only see that the human exploitation is not there within their organization, but even outside it. And lastly, the social inclusive development. So it was on economic and social development of communities, geographical areas where they were operating, education, skill building, healthcare, etc. Okay. But there is a very interesting contrast. If you see the initiative which was supposed to be voluntary before this act came into force, the government said that the companies were to allocate budget for CSR activities in any of the following ways: either link it to profit, or link it to cost of the project, or any other suitable parameter which the corporate could think of. So there was no mandatory spend per se, and there was no yardstick how it should be taken forward. Then the reporting part was through their website or through annual report or through other communication media about their CSR policies, CSR activities or progress. Now, you look at the scenario after the new act has come into force, it is a good makeover from the earlier policy which was voluntary. And here the CSR spend has been more or less mandatory. What the law says is either you spend or you explain. So corporates are forced to tell their stakeholders whether they are spending on the activity, if not why. So that is one good thing. And secondly, there is a computation method, so I don't want to get into technical aspects of it. Let me skip to the second aspect, which is CSR committee. Now, CSR committee is mandatory in all companies, which Mr. Avinash was mentioning in terms of either net worth or turnover or the profit. Now, the best part which I love in that enactment is that even a medium-sized enterprise, if it is making a profit of 5 crore plus, they are now made accountable to society through CSR spend. Now, every company will have to have, apart from the board of directors, a CSR committee within the organization. The objective is that the CSR committee will have to come up with the projects or programs. Then they have to recommend to the board of directors, and the board will have to approve the policies or programs which are recommended to them and monitor the implementation. Now, the act also permits the corporations to either implement the CSR through their own company as a vertical, as a department. Their employees can implement the projects or programs which are envisaged by the corporation, or they can also outsource this activity to a non-profit organization. It could be a trust, or it could be a Section 8 company, which is non-profit company. But when you outsource, you need to be careful. The company or the trust should be having a track record of 3 years in the space of CSR activity. Now, another important aspect which is brought out in the legislation is that the board of directors will have to be accountable. They need to report in their report to the shareholders. Now, what is that CSR activity they have envisaged, what is the progress, how much has been spent, and if they have not spent fully, what is the reason for not spending. So it also creates some sense of seriousness on the part of the board to see that the CSR activity is implemented in true spirit. Now, I'm focusing on this particular slide. The reason is from morning I was also listening to all the entrepreneurs, startups and social entrepreneurs. Their worry is where is finance, where is support, okay? Now, if you look at the activities and from the presentations what I had seen from morning, you talk of waste management, you talk of sanitation and drinking water, you talk of renewable energy, talk of energy saving tubes, bulbs, education, skill development, civil and other infrastructure, healthcare, agroforestry, setting up and running libraries, sport equipment, and various activities. All of these are covered under CSR, and it need not be a restrictive interpretation of what these activities could be. The government has come out with clarification. They say that you can interpret very liberally as long as the activities contribute to the good of the society, you need not worry. So this is one area which has opened up floodgates of opportunities for social enterprises. And the figures which was mentioned by Avinash during his presentation of 20,000 crores on CSR spend is only from the perspective of large corporates. But if you take the total spend which is required in 1 year is something like 40,000 crores. You can imagine the kind of funds which are available. Now here, let me just add a small, a small idea which we are contemplating. We are working, and it is on the drawing board. As we have seen, the CSR initiative has been very fragmented, very narrow in approach. A corporate can just do some support for education. Some other corporate will focus on healthcare. It's all, it's not happening in a place where you can see the integrated approach, holistic approach. It's all happening in bits and pieces. So you'll not be able to see the real impact if you want to see. And particularly, we are seeing a lot of migration to cities. And we have seen how the city of Bangalore has decayed over years. And I'm sure all of you who are Bangaloreans, you will agree with me. There used to be winter sweater sales, and everybody had to wear sweater from probably August onwards. And today in December, when I go for my morning walk, I just wear my ordinary T-shirt. There is no need for a sweater or a pullover. Now, that is a kind of environment damage we have seen. Now, what we are thinking as consultants and legal professionals and accounting professionals, couple of us, we have an organization also called Srijam Corporate Services. We have on drawing board an integrated approach for CSR activity. We are planning to tap large corporates, and we would like to bring within the umbrella the social enterprises who are very passionate about what they are doing. And we want to take this not in the cities. We want to go away from cities, go to probably tier 2, tier 3 cities. Look at all these possibilities from waste management, convert waste management into probably compost, then give it to free to the farmers, set up old age homes, okay? Set up education facilities, set up healthcare facilities as a composite approach so that we can see the impact in one place. If you are successful in implementing in a village or probably a town which is a little bigger than village, I'm sure once we can showcase that in one center, we'll be able to replicate this across probably the state and country. Now with that, I would like to just conclude my presentation. Probably we'll have some question answers. You are all free to share your thoughts. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll take the questions during the panel. So I'll now request a rural BPO model, and today he's going to share the details of the Datahalli initiatives which are being driven.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm hoping I'm the last speaker, so it's my responsibility to, get your attention. And so I'm not going to give you a lot of scary slides, a lot of text. I'm going to tell you a very short and simple story about the real impact of CSR, what's actually happening on the ground. The good thing, the beauty of CSR is there's money. So money can help you fuel your dreams. It can help you, give wings to your passion. So JSW Foundation is one of the largest foundations in India, and I'm very proud and happy to be representing them today. So JSW has varied interest in steel, cement, infrastructure, ports, and IT business. So I'm going to tell you about Data Halli, which is actually, how does this go ahead? So that's why I hate PowerPoints. I think you can make a great point without the PowerPoint. Okay, yeah. So we go back to 2005. So I can proudly say that Data Halli is India's first woman-only rural BPO. We set it up way back in 2005. So now we are talking about in 2014 about rural BPO being a business model for IT BPO industry, being a low-cost delivery option for, tier one BPOs. That did not exist in 2005. So the entire intention of Data Halli was to give back to the society. If I go back to Chinmay's slide about who's spending more in CSR, I was very happy to see the steel companies are spending the most. And we are doing a bit, we are doing a part. So way back in 2005, JSW Steel plant was opening up in Bellary, North Karnataka. So the option was to either write a check to the community or do something about it. So there are a lot of options when it comes to CSR. You can spend in health, you can spend towards environment, you can spend towards women empowerment, you can spend towards a lot of other aspects. So why did this concept of rural BPO came about in 2005? Mrs. Sangeeta Jindal is the chairperson of JSW Foundation. She's pretty passionate about women empowerment. So JSW being a $15 billion conglomerate had a lot of back office operations coming out. So it was a perfect marriage of using back office operations and giving women some livelihood. Why the women? In Bellary, the demographics say that the men have very lucrative jobs in terms of they drive trucks to ferry the iron ore from the mines to the steel plant. They can earn close to 20,000 rupees a month. They can get a job in the plant, they can earn a lot, they can do metallurgy courses and they can earn a lot. But what about the woman? So the woman, the girls, they had no other option but to sit at home, look after children, and basically do domestic chores. So here was an opportunity for us to use our infrastructure, to use our money, and give back to the society, especially the women. So that's how we created Data Halli. Obviously, Halli in Kannada means village, and data is an English word. So that's the concept. So the challenge in front of us was to how do we train them? How do you take rural women and girls straight from the villages, from the households, and make them do BPO work, make them do IT related work? So it was a long road where we had to invest a lot on training. These girls never saw a computer. They never saw an AC before. They never knew that there's work to be done by sitting in an office. So this was an interesting challenge for us. So what we did is we invested in training. It was a 4-month training where they knew about English, how to read, comprehend. And mind you, the background of these girls were that they had done the 10th, but they were just sitting at home. So this was an opportunity for us to use their talent to get our back office done. So we started doing simple activities like data entry, give them spreadsheets, let them take our financial reports or invoices or vouchers and get them entered into an Excel sheet. That was the most basic stuff that could have been done. So thankfully, we had a good patron in the form of ICICI Bank. They came forward and they said, can you digitize our checks? So we had a lot of checks coming from ICICI Bank, and then the team grew. Now we realized that we need more people. So we started hiring more people, more girls, to be specific, more women. So now we had a 50-member team doing digitization of checks for ICICI Bank, putting that in Excel, and they had a turnaround, and they're working under pressure. So we're looking at a transformation of rural girls who were just sitting at home. Now they're doing work for a large MNC bank. So that was sometime, 1 year, 2006, 2007. So if I just fast forward from 2007 to 2014, where we are today is we have 2 centers. We have close to 300 seats and employing 600 women in Bellary region alone. So what we're looking at going forward is we're looking at multiplying the strength. This is a huge case study. This is a huge success. And we want to employ more and more women into this kind of an activity. I might not have those slides. JSW has a lot of plants across India. We have cement plant in Andhra. We have energy plant in Himachal. We have ports in Maharashtra. So in fact, I'm also part of that team which is conceptualizing, can we replicate this model across India? Wherever JSW is located, wherever Jindal Steel is located, can we replicate this model and give more and more opportunities to women and girls in that area? So I'm extremely happy to report that we are opening our new BPO center sometime this month in Ratnagiri district in Maharashtra. So this will have 50 seats and will give opportunity to close to 100 women and girls to be working out there in a similar kind of environment. The challenges of a rural BPO or a social enterprise is sustainability. CSR can fund you, can help you get the CapEx, can help you get the computers, the office set up, but what's next? How do you sustain that model? How do you ensure that it's profitable? And yes, we do make profits in certain activities because we have come so far that we can go and approach US clients and tell them to give us work. At this current juncture, we have healthcare, we have e-publishing, we have BFSI clients working across the globe. It's a fascinating story to, or a thing to see that girls from a rural background picking up the phone and talking to clients from the US and helping them solve problems in their day-to-day work. We have one of the largest clients in terms of Tata Sky. If you happen to call Tata Sky and you happen to press Kannada or Telugu as an option, most probably those calls will land in our center, in our rural BPO. So that's the effect. That's real impact, what CSR can do, the money that these corporates have can do to the society. And JSW Foundation is not a very, you'll not see ads, you'll not hear much about us in print media or social media. We do things quietly. We believe in creating a revolution. So I'll tell you about the impact that has been created because of this rural BPO Data Halli. The biggest impact on the ground when we speak and interview girls, a woman is, strangely, what they tell us is they're able to find better grooms for themselves. They have a better choice in finding a better suitor for themselves. That's the biggest impact, I believe. The second biggest impact, what we have seen is the livelihood in terms of adding to the income. What money they take from this rural BPO, it could be very less, maybe like 5,000, 6,000 rupees a month. That is really adding or doubling up the income in their households. So that's a real impact to a household that is earning less than $100 a month, $5,000 rupees a month. So that's real impact. In terms of some of the other impacts that this model has created is, in this last 10 years, NASSCOM Foundation, Rockefeller Foundation have recognized these kind of models as impact sourcing models. If you go to Google and just type this word impact sourcing, you will see tons of research and white papers on this kind of model. And they're taking to Africa, they're taking it to places where they believe it can really create an impact. The thing about an urban BPO versus a rural BPO is, if a guy works in a BPO, he takes some salary in his, a certain salary that adds to his lifestyle. But if a woman from this kind of a background takes the salary, that really impacts their life. So that's the difference between a rural BPO and an urban BPO. The second biggest impact is reverse migration. We see a lot of people from this tier 2 cities and towns, tier 2, tier 3, coming to Bangalore or coming to major metros to looking for employment. So this has put a check on that. So that's again a second impact. So over these years, I'm very happy that this has come a long way. People have recognized us. We won the Global Sourcing Council Award in New York in 2013, and 2014 NASSCOM Foundation gave us the Social Innovation Honors Award. So we are doing a small bit, a quiet revolution, I would say, in this space, where we're marrying social causes, women empowerment, and technology to drive a real impact. In fact, the icing on the cake came when we were invited by the United Nations to open up a similar BPO in Gaza, in a conflict-ridden place in Gaza. They want to replicate this model and give employment and jobs to people who are affected because of the conflict. So that was really some acknowledgement. So having said that, we are not done yet, because this model is sustainable, this model can be replicated, and the beauty about CSR is that it can fund those dreams in different parts of the country. So we have just begun, that's the bottom line, is we have just begun, and there's a lot more to be done. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.